Now, had you used software before for maintenance in other areas, and what was your experience in those tools, if you did?
Yeah, I did. We did. I did get exposed as a user. More, it was more of a user part of it, but it was more of the other ones that a little bit weaker at the time. Again, just very very basic, right? So I wasn't really involved with it. I was just mechanical, if you want, on the day to day of using a documented piece of software, right? So when maintenance care came along, I was fortunate enough to actually, participate in it, right? And then, it changed a lot how we did it, right? Right now, again, I take it to more and more levels and everything. And I'm fortunate I work with some really, really great guys that think outside the box a little bit. So one of the things that we're in the works right now, we're it's going to be 2025, a super big launch, but we've been at it now for about a year. It's that networking that we want to bring to maintenance care, right? So we actually have certain people at certain properties that have access to the notes, right, to your parts tabs, to our vendors. Anyway, the database that is withheld in maintenance care, we're making it available to everybody, right? So, if you're running a kitchen or whatever, a fridge is a fridge, right? They all work the same. So if you're lucky enough, and I'm part of the capital team, and again, we can talk about that for another 3 hours with maintenance care. Love that part of it. We tried to buy the same type of it when we're replacing the same equipment, right? Which obviously is documented in maintenance care and so on. We attach the manufacturer's manual recommendation on the preventive maintenance, and this is accessible to all the maintenance guys regardless where you are. So if you're in BC, that's fine. If you're in Alberta, you have the same ice machine or same refrigeration. So and the camaraderie, I like that part. All right, so yeah, so it's actually very fun.
Yeah, that's great. No, and it sounds like the asset portion of the software is kind of the biggest win in a way, because you have the biggest return on investment, like you said, on the capital planning and so on. So maybe we can talk a bit about that. Like, there's some really great reports in maintenance care that help with that, but what's your process for evaluating equipment that should be replaced or that are aging or that you want to make last longer? What's your process for looking at all that? Is it a yearly thing that you do, or do you do it continually?
So again, depending on the piece of equipment, and this is how I do my spiel to everybody, we don't need to invent the wheel, right? With every piece of equipment out there, regardless of the property you have, there's a manual attached to it. The manufacturer is going to tell you these are the specs, these are the expectation, life expectancy, and you must conduct certain preventive maintenance, let it be quarterly, weekly, daily, whatever it might be. So with that said, documentation is key. You're very right. When you start with maintenance care, the very first thing you have to do, build your assets. End of story, right? Once you build that baseline and then go through the training and letting everybody understand the importance of documenting every detail and costs. This is where it's very important. Not just the monetary part of it, Dan, but also the time that you put into it, right? Because again, we all answer to somebody. Everybody holds a budget. A wish list is not always something that you can, get through all of it and get 100% of it. So when you need to make your case and you see a piece of equipment, and again, putting all the proper information in there. Love that little green bar, yellow bar, red bar. Red bar, start thinking about getting some money from the big boys upstairs. Then we can make our case. Myself, right now, the application, and most properties are like that when they deal with the corporate level like I do, there's a process for capital, right? And they need to have all the documentation. So it's basically, when did we buy it? How much did we pay for it? What's the life expectancy? How much have we paid for it? What's the replacement cost? Any salvage costs? And then they want to break down on basically, how did we take care of this piece of equipment, right? Legit questions, right? So again, with maintenance care and the reporting and so on, it's actually makes it, streamlines it, and it makes it a little bit easier, and your presentation carries more weight, right?
So your executives that are making the decision on where to budget and what to buy are starting to rely on information that you're getting from your day-to-day process in the system, whatever system you're using. They want that information. Now they're going to make decisions based on your recommendations there, but you have something to support it with. And that's, I guess, the key is once they start to rely on it as being accurate, then it becomes easier for them to say yes if it's legit, right? So that's really good to hear. And so did you, throughout your years, how did you evolve in that process of asset management? Did you pick up all your knowledge on the job, and how did you learn all of this stuff to get to a level like you are?
For that, I'm lucky. I work with really, really great bosses and seniors and all that. I've even spent time with people that are very knowledgeable in the accounting part of it, right? Which that was a weak area. Again, I'm involved with the capital process, the values of replacement and all that. So it's all about listening, right, and just gathering that information. The one thing that I was able, because I always figure, how do I make it easier? How do I get away from these hard conversations, right? Because my world is not always understood by others, right? We each have our own job to do, so we don't necessarily understand somebody else's sandbox, right? So with that said, my approach over the last 10 years or more is we do preventive maintenance, but what about preventive asset management, right? So in other words, being able to look at a piece of equipment and say, we need to start budgeting for that. Because the worst thing is then knocking on the door and say, listen, I need the 100,000, please. That doesn't go over very well, right? So, but if you're able to come up and say, listen, in 2026, 2027, whatever it might be, we need to start looking at this piece of equipment. Here's the history. Here's the ongoing pattern. The other key thing is at some point something seems to discontinue, right? Now that's always a pain for the best of the best, right? No longer available, right? So all these key points, again, documenting and everything, we can't remember all this. So I actually use maintenance care when my budget season comes up to starting it. I put a reminder in there. Right? So I just let maintenance care just like bang. And I'll attach the document there, whatever. I might just create an Excel or whatever, but I'll put it in there and just like, oh, by the way, Leon, reminder, these 6 units need to be talked about for the next following budget. So
yeah, and that's great. So I guess the advice there too is if somebody's starting out in the position of being a maintenance manager and they want to grow in that, they just talk to people about how they do their process, let's say, like you said, in finance and the executive level, how they make the decisions, so you know what is important to them. You start to track those things and you can have those conversations, like you said, are a little smoother, and as you grow, you get to know what works and what doesn't. So that's really good advice.